Low T Bears Den today. Happy Friday, everybody. Finally Friday. Getting ready to gas up for the weekend. Baylor baseball playing the next 2 nights. Go out to the ballpark. Go to Baylor Ballpark. See them play tonight against Oklahoma, tomorrow against Oklahoma. And then on top of that, you fly out to Orlando. And then catch Baylor men's tennis play. And then as soon as that's over, fly over to Gainesville and go watch Baylor softball play as well. Again, Drake Toll, J.D. PicKell. We got Jack McKenzie and Andrew Robertson today. Big question on everybody's mind, on my mind right now. Jared Butler and Matthew Mayer. I want to start with Butler. We can kind of go back and forth on the both of them, but most of the time you hear guys declare for the NBA draft right there around the time their season ends. So maybe if a team loses out in the round of 32, guy gives it 2 or 3 days, say goodbye to his teammates, talk it over with his coaches, then he's going to declare for the NBA draft. It's pretty typical that guys, as soon as their season's over, bow out and make their decision quickly. Now, it's not atypical to have a guy wait a little bit, hear some noise, see what kind of roster turnover is going to happen with his school, maybe talk to his coaches, think, okay, if I want to transfer portal, weigh some options, take a few weeks to do it, right?
It would feel that way. Oh, sorry. I thought you were done.
It's a little bit different to have a guy that waits till after graduation. Most of those are pretty late. Why would you not declare now, start the process where you can get to know a lot of the NBA scouts better, do some workouts, go through some once you declare and say, I'm going pro, I'm signing an agent, it's free reign. You can do whatever you want at that point. You can sell your likeness. You can go do workouts. You can sign a contract with Puma or Adidas. Or at that point, in my opinion, I would do that as soon as possible if I've got that kind of projection. So Jared Butler is a first-round draft pick projection, around that 24 to 28 range in most of the mock drafts that I've seen coming after March Madness. But we are now within a week and a half. It's May 30th is the deadline to declare for the NBA draft and officially put your name in. And it's been crickets from Jared Butler.
And it's strange because he declared for the draft a year ago, like pretty easily. Like it was a concern last year, like, hey, he might actually go this past year. And so for him to not have declared yet, and there's a week and a half to a week left before he can actually make a declaration to go pro, like this is very confusing to me because it seems like his mind was almost made up to leave a year ago, is what it felt like. That's what he had communicated to everybody in the public. So to not have a declaration of going pro feels very, very odd to me. The Matthew Mayer thing, I think, makes more sense when Jack talks about it and saying, hey, you just want to be around these guys as long as possible. I think that makes some sense. My pushback would be, well, how much are you going to gain with one more week? I think my thought is like you probably have gotten what you need to get done before that one. And at a certain point, too, are you losing credibility with staying in too long and then pulling out at the last seconds? Like, okay, well, this guy's kind of flaky. He led us on. Maybe you damaged some relationships by staying in too long. So there's a lot of pieces about this that don't really make sense to me. I don't pretend to be super privy to the way the NBA draft works, and I'm sure there's different agents that recommend different things, but I think that there's probably a degree of playing with fire here for both these prospects, because for Jared Butler, on his end, if you declare too late, I don't know how much of his analysis from a season ago from scouts carries over. I'm sure a good bit of it does, but do you not hurt yourself by declaring too late? It's just all very interesting in a lot of pieces to me.
You know what's really interesting to me is the last player that I can find to announce for the first time, to go from quiet to saying they were doing anything or going anywhere. This is the last major headline in college basketball. I'm sure a couple of guys probably have done it since then. You could argue Mac McClung, but I don't want to say Mac McClung already declared for the NBA draft effectively about a month ago. Came out and said, I'm either going to the NBA draft or I'm coming back to Texas Tech. Mm-hmm. He first entered the transfer portal, tested draft waters, then said, he said, I'm not going to test transfer portal. It's either draft or Tech. And then 3 days ago said, 4 days ago said, I'm going to go to the NBA draft. I don't count that because he already declared that he was testing draft waters a month ago. The last one you can find here is Max Asmus from Oral Roberts, who tore it up at Oral Roberts this year, who said 10 days ago, after his team's surprising run in the NCAA tournament, that he would declare for the NBA draft, but keep his eligibility. So that's it was 10 days ago, the last time a major basketball player in college basketball said, I'm going to test the NBA draft water. So not only are we getting late in the process, we're so late in the process that it's now been a week and a half since the last time that any player that matters on the NBA draft scale has even uttered the words, I'm going pro.
And that gives me more.
That's how late we are.
That gives me more confidence in the Matthew Meyer situation if A. Smith announced like 10 days ago and still hasn't withdrawn his name. Because anytime a guy specifies, hey, I'm going pro, but I'm keeping my eligibility, I'm not getting an agent, it's kind of like, well, you're basically saying that you're not actually going pro. You're saying I'm going to go test the waters. If I get a high enough grade, maybe I'll go pro. But a lot of the guys that are saying I'm going to keep my eligibility, more often than not, it feels like come back to school.
I don't know how much faith you guys put in mock drafts, but that's what I was doing for the last 10 minutes, was looking at all the mock drafts, seeing where people are going to fall. Jared Butler is in between 15 and 17 on every mock draft I've looked at. He's projected to go to the Golden State Warriors, which would be electric. I'd watch some of those games.
For sure.
Davion Mitchell's projected to go 7 right now, 7 to 9 in that region, to like around the Raptors was what I was looking at. That'd be cool. Freddie Gillespie and him tearing things up. Now, for Matthew Meyer, he's not even in the top 60 on the last 3 that I checked. He was earlier. He's hovering right around 62 to 65. So that he's not going to get drafted. I think the likelihood of him, he could get drafted, but the likelihood, he's probably going to be a teetering 60th pick. I think it's more likely than not that he returns, and I think it's more likely than not that Jared Butler goes. It is a little strange to me that Jared Butler hasn't announced yet, considering how early he announced last year. But that being said, Jared definitely has a plan. He's projected to go so early. It's a no-brainer. He's a late lottery pick. I think we might be overthinking this a little bit. I think these guys are going to make the right decisions.
And I wonder what he has to gain, too, from not declaring already.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. Maybe he's just taking a little summer vacation. Just having a good time.
He's earned it.
He's earned it. Taking a summer vacation. We go to school with them. You know, I mean, I can tell you, Jared Butler's not taking a summer vacation. And you say he's got a plan. I don't know if this guy's got it all slotted out right now on what he's going to do. I've heard murmurs from friends and people that are around him, but there's yet to be anybody even on the inside. It's like, oh yeah, no, Jared Butler's gone. I've heard from a lot of analysts. Like we talked to Matthew Postins on the show. This has been last week, not even this week, and he said, listen, you got to tell me what's going on with Jared Butler, because everyone here is confused. Like the fact that he hasn't gone is confusing a lot of people, because one could only expect that by this time of the year, graduation is over, the major keys and milestones are gone, Davion Mitchell is gone, Mark Vidal is gone, Maceo Teague, those guys all announced. Jared Butler announced really early last year. You can win, what if I look at this, you can win little to nothing by declaring a week and a half before the deadline. I mean, we're getting so close. Why would this be smart whatsoever to hold out?
We're talking about it. You know, the media is talking about it. He's getting a lot of, what's Jared Butler going to do? Eyes on Jared Butler from National Spotlight. What's he going to do?
But he's not that guy. He's not that kind of guy.
He's not that guy. But maybe.
Maybe his agent. Maybe his agent is saying, hey, Jared, I doubt he'd bring anybody in his camp. But like,
he doesn't have an agent.
We're just exploring conspiracy theories at this point, right? Like,
but he can't have an agent.
Okay, so maybe someone in his camp.
Would this be the highest projected mock draft player to not declare in history? Like it feels like it has to be close.
That's a good question. It's got to be up there.
17 that's first round. You're getting paid. Like it makes no sense to me why it wouldn't go. What's he gonna try? What does he want to be, top 3? It's 17, top 3, whatever. It's kind of the same thing.
I don't think you have a better season than you had this year. Like maybe you come back and you're the guy, but for all the accolades he got, he was probably robbed of Player of the Year. I doubt he wants to come back and win Player of the Year. I doubt that's on his list of things to do outside of going to the NBA, right? He won a national championship.
He can go play with Steph Curry at Golden State. That's where he's projected right now.
And
How fun would that be?
I think that's why we're all exploring these conspiracies too, is because a lot of this doesn't make sense. So when things don't make sense, you just kind of start grabbing at different details and going down those rabbit holes. Because I'm at a loss. If I'm Jared Butler, I declare right when the clock hits triple zeros.
I declare yesterday. Correct.
I'm gone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that there are a lot of benefits to declaring early, being able to get into this process as early as possible. Jack was talking about it. Meeting the scouts, getting familiar with the NBA game, and being around the game that you'll be a part of for hopefully years to come as an NBA professional player. If you're Jared Butler, I think, are you stifling anybody? Are you stifling yourself by not declaring earlier? I mean, again, I want to ask that question. I want to know if there's an answer there. To what benefit would it be to wait this long, aside from maybe some publicity that I know Jared Butler's not looking for? I could see maybe Matthew Meyer, but not Jared Butler, looking for publicity. Outside of that, is there any benefit to declaring 5 days before the deadline?
Unless you just feel phenomenal about your draft grade from a year ago and everybody else that you're hearing from, like, hey, take your time, you have this draft grade, it's not going anywhere. Either way, I can't imagine that's the case. If you get such a great draft grade, you're probably like, great, okay, I'll take my money. I graduated. So to answer your question, Drake, I don't think there is. I don't think you have anything to gain from declaring late. Now, I've never declared for the NBA draft, but I would imagine that's probably how it works.
Yeah, this doesn't seem like a strategic move. It seems almost like, there's something there that's making him hold off. It's not, I know it's his choice in the end, but it's also, you wonder, like, is something out of his hands here?
We could be missing a detail, a pivotal detail, some would say.
Maybe he was considered for the women's basketball job.
Did something pop up with the heart issue?
Maybe he was up there. Maybe he was up there for the women's basketball job.
Also,
maybe it is a women's basketball job.
Does he have, he's already tested the waters a bit. He declared last year, already has, an agent that he worked with, probably already knows a solid amount of the scouts. Is he maybe like, I already know all these guys, let me just chill out for a minute?
You would hope so. I mean, that would make sense.
Yeah,
that would make sense.
He already knows the guys. He knows he's going to go first rounder. Maybe he's just chilling out.
Maybe he says, hey, let's do this. We got G-Dub on the line. He's been on here for 10 minutes. G-Dub, you want to join the conversation, talk a little about Jared Butler and everything that he's going to do here, or hopefully he's going to do here in the coming days?
I mean, I just don't see why he hasn't done it. I mean, get his bag and go to the NBA, but then think about this. If he comes, I'm not saying it'd be a bad thing, but think about this. We have so many, because you have Cryer that come back, you have Flagler come back, then you have the transfer coming in from Arizona or wherever he was coming from. Yeah. How do you divvy up those minutes between just those four guards alone? Because Jared's gonna start.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, that's a great point that you make right there, G-Dub, because you got so many. What is the thing about chefs and cooks in kitchens?
Too many cooks in the kitchen.
Too many cooks in the chef and the oven.
Yep.
Right. And so you've got, if the cooks are all great, but at some point in time, you've got to, it's time for the next guy up. So Ryan, we actually had that question was asked on the chat. Ryan Moy says, hey, so if he comes, would the two transfers leave if Butler comes back? Because now you're looking at a roster that is guard loaded. And I would argue almost two guard loaded. At that point, if you're James Akinjo, who I still think will start, but if you're Kendall Brown, Jeremy Sohan, these guys that want to play in maybe more of a guard role, now what do you do?
My question, too, for them is, are you able to transfer? I know there's the one-time transfer rule, but some of these guys have already transferred, so they've already signed a letter of intent. I saw that the D2 transfer had already signed as well after his financial aid agreement was taken care of. Anyway, everyone's signed. Like, everyone is pen to paper, locked in. You'd have to think Baylor is signing these guards in, anticipation of Butler leaving. Like, that would make sense to me. So I don't know that they can get out of this now. So maybe you just have too many cooks in the kitchen for a season. But this whole thing really does feel very weird to me.
Scholarship numbers too, man. There's a lot of X's and O's that would come back to Jared Butler coming back because Baylor has built a roster as if he will not return, but he's yet to make an announcement. Look, if I got to put my money on it right now, I think it's 50-50. At the end of the NCAA tournament, I would have told you that it's 20-80. Or maybe worse. Like, he had an 80+% chance of declaring for the NBA draft. Yeah. But right now, as late as it is, as quiet as he's been, the fact that everybody else, the last major declaration was 10 days ago, makes me think there's something there, that there's a better chance than we've been giving it that Jared Butler does return. I don't think that saying that is out of line. I think saying that is realistic, that it is not impossible, that there is a decent chance that Jared Butler's in a Baylor jersey again next season for whatever reason. Maybe it's a culture standpoint. Maybe he wants to pull a Davion Mitchell and move to the top 10. I'll say it, and I'll defend it. I think Jared Butler's got a real shot at coming back to Baylor. I will not be surprised if it happens. You can book it right now. It's 11:39 local time on Friday, May 21st. Jared Butler might come back, and if he does, don't be surprised.
And then the other thing, the Sunday school, him being a Sunday school teacher, that's got to be on his mind too, leaving all those kids.
Yeah, I don't know.
Culture fit. I think that goes into the culture thing. You plug into a church, plug into a community. He's a big community guy. I think that's probably part of it. I don't know how big of a part of it is, but the fact that he's so immersed in the community, I think you got to add that kind of part in. I think there may be something there, G-Dub.
Yeah. Hey, and then Jared Atkinson just announced he's leaving Baylor.
Dang. J-Red. I wonder. So he's in transfer portal then, it sounds like.
Just saw that, yeah. It sucks.
He just says stay tuned for what's next. So I don't know if it's something going on with his mom, which she's battled cancer twice. So hopefully it's not something like that. But, yeah, I'm sad to see him go.
Big day for the portal. Big day for the portal. Yeah, sad to see him go, too. He's a guy I think that would have gotten a lot of at least rotational play with him coming into the system and being a big body and being a guy. I mean, he's kind of Denzel Mims-esque. I mean, I don't know if anyone's Denzel Mims, but he's Denzel Mims-esque with his frame, catch radius. Like, could have developed into a really good player. Sad to see him go.
I watched. He played a couple snaps last season. He was not a bad player. No. Tough to see him go.
Yeah.
G-Dub, before we get you out of here, Bear Games question of the day today. If you were in the huddle for the Baylor men's tennis Final Four matchup today and you got to give the pregame speech, what are you telling them?
Do you really need to say anything in a Final Four? You go back to what some of the walk-ons that played under Scott Drew. What you'll ask them what he was thinking, what he was gonna say to them before their games, and he's like, "There's really nothing to say. If you don't get hyped for that moment, you shouldn't be in the moment."
I like it. G-Dub, thanks for calling in, boss.
G-Dub is saying nothing. I love it. That's pretty staunch right there from old G-Dub. On that, so one Jared has not declared whether or not he's staying or going, and one Jared says I'm leaving. Jared Atkinson is out the door. Really quickly, what do you make of that? I'm not sure how much Jared Atkinson would have been a vital part of the offense next season.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that's been in the program for a while. I mean, he's seen some time. He probably wouldn't have been like the go-to receiver, especially with how stacked they are and what they did in the portal getting Garrett Estrada. So I don't know that he would have played a pivotal role, but I think he was a guy that's been around and a guy that was brought here under Bryles. Like, the guy could play receiver.
Correct. He's a sixth-year senior.
Yeah.
So honestly, he didn't say he's entering the transfer portal. He might just be done.
Might be done. Yeah.
Like according to to what I'm reading here on Twitter, injuries, offensive scheme changes, coaching changes. He might just be done.
I mean, he's been through the ringer at Baylor, and he was a guy that I got to talk to a little bit when I was on the team. And one day we just kind of got talking about, hey, what do you want to do after football? And he said, man, I want to go back to my hometown. I want to help the youth. I want to be a part of getting kids into sports and allowing them to see what it can do for them in their life. And so hats off to Jared Atkinson. I don't know what's next for him, if it's college football or not, but either way, he'll be a success whatever he chooses to do.
So looking at I know we looked at the very Jared Butler side of things with this NBA draft argument. I want to kind of focus on Matthew Meyer for a second, because I think Baylor is not exponentially worse, but worse if Matthew Meyer doesn't come back next season. He, in my opinion, will be in the running, if not in the running for Big 12 preseason player of the year.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, he comes back, he's your best player on your roster, probably. If not your best player, your best scorer. I think there's a lot of question marks with who's coming into this, program. But Matthew Meyer, what he brings you from a scoring perspective, he would have been elite. And I'm with you. I think he would have been, definitely in the conversation, if not the guy for Big 12 player preseason of the entire conference.
I think if he comes back in another great year with his frame and his shooting ability, like, he could be a top 3 pick in the NBA if he has a great season.
Yeah,
he has that kind of aspirations.
He
the ceiling
is
so high.
Wise.
You don't think that ceiling
you still see guys go top 3.
You're not going to draft a 22-year-old in the top 3.
Why?
There's no way. There's zero way. It doesn't happen in the NBA.
It doesn't happen in the NBA. It's happened before.
All right, top 5. In the past decade, probably. I don't even know about top 5.
You're telling me if Matthew Meyer puts up 25 points a game at 6'9", they're not going to give him top 5?
You're telling Matthew Meyer's putting up 25 points a game. I think your hypothetical is crazier than mine.
No way. He's going to be a starting player on the most electric offense in the country. I think it's very doable.
That's the problem. That's why he's not playing. That's why he's not scoring 25. Because if he's scoring 25, then is anybody else scoring?
Well, yeah, we put up 100 points a game like 20 times last season.
Right. There's way too many guys to share the basketball with, though. Jared Butler's a 20-point-per-night guy if he doesn't play with Davion Mitchell and Maceo Teague. With Matthew Meyer playing alongside Kendall Brown and James Akinjo and Adam Flagler, L.J. Cryer, there's no way Meyer's a 25-point-per-game guy. If Luka Garza plays for Baylor this past season, there's no way Luka Garza scores his 20 a game.
Wait and see.
I see both sides of this conversation. I do think that the potential for him to go really high is possible. I don't know that you look at age as closely. I think there's a trend of guys that are just phenoms in high school probably translate quicker. So I think that's definitely a real piece of it. But I don't know if you're in the NBA, you're saying, hey, he's 22, he's kind of getting long in the tooth. I don't know. That's a conversation they're having. That very well could be, but I would be surprised if it was. In regards to the whole Matthew Meyer still staying right now, in terms of staying inside of the NBA draft, I guess, system right now. I texted a friend of mine from Cornell, and he was a guy who declared for the NBA draft every single season. So he was all Ivy League. I think he was All-American a couple times, like second all-time. Maybe he's first actually all-time in terms of the scoring record at Cornell. Anyway, I asked him, I said, why would a guy not why would you wait so long to keep your name in the hat? He just said, I think maybe you're trying to get as much information as possible. So credit to Jack, what he said earlier. It really must be a matter of getting just all the information you possibly can. Or on the flip side, he said maybe he's hearing something that he thinks it's best for him to go right now. Now, again, I don't know why